Thank you so much for joining us at another episode of Kathy on the Couch, the EMDR podcast for everyday clinicians. We hope today's conversation has inspired you. We're grateful to have you as a part of our great community. EMDR University is here to companion you alongside your EMDR career path from Rewire 360. The moment you complete your basic training, we offer comprehensive support and resources that guide you through every stage. Our curriculum is designed to fill the gaps often found in the marketplace, providing advanced training and consultation and mentorship to you as you progress in your professional journey. Whether you're seeking foundational skills or advanced expertise, EMDR University is your partner in growth and excellence. So be sure to check out our show notes for a full list of courses and visit our swag store. Also check out our show notes if you're interested in learning more about EMDR intensives or want to look at innovative tools like Dharma Doctor Tappers, and you'll find the links in our show notes. A quick disclaimer, the information shared on this podcast reflects the perspectives and experiences of our guests and hosts. It's not intended to substitute for professional consultation, supervision, or individual guidance. If you have questions about how to apply any of the concepts discussed, we encourage you to consult with your clinical supervisor, consultant, or your local supervision board. As always, follow research-based protocols and best practices in your work. We're here to walk alongside you as you deepen your understanding of EMDR. This is Kathy Couch. On behalf of Tony Parmenter and the entire team, thank you for being here with us on the couch, and we'll see you in the next episode. Welcome to the Kathy on the Couch, the EMDR podcast for everyday clinicians. We are here with clinical conversations that happen with people doing the important work in therapy, grief, and EMDR in general. Today, we have an exciting guest, Jane Campbell-Stewart. And so we are so happy to have you here today. Jane, can you please just give us a brief introduction and kind of talk about yourself? And then we will get into the topic of healing the birth story today.
Yes, so I'm Jane McCampbell-Stewart. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm also an MDRS certified EMDR therapist. In addition to that, I do a lot of energy psychology work, and I'm also a practitioner of the Akashic Records. And one of the things that I love to do is to take things that I've learned in different places and spaces and then blend them together to make them work more effectively, more quickly, and more powerfully. And so what I'm going to present today is an example of one of those things where I've taken what I learned through EMDR and then have added some things to it to allow it to work in a new way.
That's so exciting. I love the blending of all of those different modalities and how you've kind of matched those together. So, yeah, let's just start with how did you get involved with the birth story and kind of just give us the story about how this came about for you.
Yeah, so I think probably like many of us, we're familiar with the Where There Are No Words protocol by Katie O'Shea and Sandra Paulson, which is a really beautiful protocol designed to help us elicit that implicit memory that the body is holding from our time in the womb and then those first few years of life before we had a narrative memory and words to put around it. And I found that so powerful. And I used it for many years for myself and just learned so much about my mum's intentionality towards me, but also the incredible anxiety and grief that she was holding and how that was still living in my body. And so I took that work on, did it for many years. But the problem I had with the protocol was that it took several weeks to do. And any time in therapy, when something takes a long time, invariably something else happens and then the work gets interrupted and then you never actually return to it. And so my concern was that we never actually got to finish the full protocol as it was written and as it was supposed to be doing. I then went down to the Meadows in Arizona and worked with Pia Melody, and she's one of the leading writers on codependency. She passed recently. And she had a process where she would take you back to go and observe what was going on in your birth story. And she did it in just one session. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And when I started blending the two, I found that a lot of the information that had taken several weeks to come through would actually still come through in that one session if you did the setup properly. The problem with peers model was that it ended with you as the adult taking your little self away with you. And that never sat well with me because I always thought the newborns really belong with the birth parent. I wanted a way of being able to do this protocol where we not only support and resource our prenate cells, but we also bring in resourcing for the birthing parent and for any others in the family or in the mix, and look at that bigger picture as to what is going on in our family system. So many of us come into life with these narratives that we weren't
Yeah.
wanted, that we don't deserve to be here, that we're unlovable. And so my counter to that is maybe it's not that you're unlovable, that you don't deserve to be here. Maybe you just arrived in the middle of a crap show. And if we can figure out what everybody was holding at that point, then it feels a lot less personal. And we can have so much more compassion for ourselves for the reason why some of those feelings are there in the body. And also so much more compassion for the person who gave birth to us and all our surrounding family.
Did you come up with a protocol yourself or have your own protocol for this?
I have my own protocol. Yes, I have my own protocol, which starts with every client that comes in the door. I'm a marriage and family therapist, so I always start with a genogram anyway. As part of my genogram process, I always ask the question, what do you know about the circumstances surrounding your conception, your gestation period, and then your birth? And when you first ask that, most clients will look at you and go, absolutely nothing. At which point I go back to the genogram and I'll say, well, it looks as though, mum and dad weren't quite married then, and that, they were living in a different city. So I will bring some of those pieces of information forward that they've already told me and just marry them together and then help them realize that all of us actually know way more about the circumstances surrounding our conception and our birth than we think we do. And all we have to do is to create a container in the brain to be able to bring all of that information forward. So I was already doing a lot of that. And what does make the process work is very much that pre-work, those questions that you ask. And then I learned that there were certain things that would make me go, oh, this is a prenatal issue. This is a birth issue. And so then I asked for that information.
Can you talk a little bit about, I've heard a little bit about Katie O'Shea's work, and maybe can you tell us about that protocol for those people who maybe haven't experienced that?
Yeah, so she does a lot of pre-work, and the pre-work again is important. So anytime you're going to be working with a client with EMDR, you always want to know how they can regulate, how they can stay in the body, and you probably want to process a narrative memory with them first, just so that they can get used to the EMDR protocol, they can get used to listening to themselves, letting their brain go where it needs to go. And then with the Katie O'Shea and Sandra Paulson protocol, it's really about listening to the body. There's a lot of preparation. And then Katie always did it with tapping, with the idea that because the information is held in the body, that doing that tactile form of bilateral stimulation was a great way to be able to release the information. And then she runs through what we already know from the body. There are 3 stages, and I'm going to mess this up because I haven't done it for a while, where we get all of the information that's held in the body, and then we make sense of it, and then we repair it. And so it's really beautiful for knowing what's in the body and then being able to say, oh, that comes from then. This isn't necessarily something I need to carry on holding now. And so being able to give a place for some of those body sensations or emotions that we hold, or some of those patterns or beliefs that we hold, it's then we can say, that was then, and this is now, and I don't have to be living out of that now. So it's a beautiful protocol, but like I say, it does take a lot of weeks to do, and it does take the client being willing to sit in their body and let you tap on them. And so a lot of clients kind of get a bit antsy and then they want to move on and talk about something else. And so it's just like I said, sometimes gets interrupted, or the client can only be in a particular stage of therapy to be able to do it. And so I kind of wanted to short circuit some of those pieces and make it.
Where do we find the protocol? How do
For
you?
Katie O'Shea, I believe it's
No,
in
yours.
my protocol. I've presented it at a couple of conferences. I have not published it yet, but that is on my big to-do list for this coming year.
And we would love to see that, because one of the complaints we get a lot is, it's taking a lot of time and we want to
Mhm.
be able to adapt it. Where can clinicians find Katie O'Shea's work or the protocol?
I believe it is written up in one of the EMDR solutions books. I'm just looking at those on my shelf now. I think it might be EMDR Solutions 2, the yellow one.
Mhm.
And it is, I think, on Sandra Paulson's site, she has a whole load of on demand trainings because, of course, she does a lot around dissociation and working with some of those protective parts and those kinds of things. So I think she has the where there are no words protocol there too.
If you're looking for that, I think it's important to have a set of tools. I work a lot with clinicians getting certified or consultants, and we're looking to see how to help them navigate some of these other issues as they go through some of their cases and things. Okay, so tell me some of the things that you look for in regards to the birth story, when to go deeper. So if it was a client you were listening to, what would be some of the things that would prompt you to go deeper?
One of the things that I notice is when there's just a sort of general ambivalence about being here or about even being in the body. Sometimes when people are really kind of floaty and it's hard to pin them down, or they struggle to make any forward movement in life, get married into a serious relationship, buy a house, or to actually settle at a job, they kind of just seem to float around through life as though they're not here with 2 feet fully in the earth. And my position is that it took a whole lot of work by a whole lot of people to get you a body. And so let's get you in the body and actually living here for the period that you're here. Because, regardless of what you believe, if you don't get it done, you might end up having to come back and do it all again. So anytime somebody's a little bit floaty, sometimes you notice that if you have a client where you feel like you're falling asleep, and it doesn't matter if you see them at 9 a.m. on a Monday or at 12 p.m. on a Wednesday or at 3 p.m. on a Friday, it's like you're always really struggling to stay present. Very often that's not you, that's about the client not being present. And because they're not present, it's like you have to go out of your body to go find them, which is really hard to do and really hard to hold the space. So that often tells me, okay, there's an ambivalence about being in the body here. So let me go and look at the birth story. Anytime there's been adoption, even the most beautifully, carefully, well-intentioned adoption is fraught with so much trauma and so much grief for everybody. So there's the prenate themselves who feels that ambivalence of mom thinking, oh, I'm going to be given away, or maybe I'm not going to be kept. There's the birth mom herself, because it's never a good decision. It's always between a rock and a hard place kind of decision. And then the grief of giving up a child. I don't think a birth parent gets over that. I do want to acknowledge that not everybody who gives birth identifies as being a female or a mum. The adoptive parents, usually there's a big story around why they're adopting in the first place, usually a lot of grief with that. In the way, particularly in the States, that the adoption process works, the adoption often isn't final until about 6 months in, during which time anyone from the birth family can come and reclaim that child. So there's a lot of anxiety there, so much stuff around the stories. I always want to go in and really offer compassion to the parents who conceived this child and all that was going on for them, and then for the adopted parents coming in on the other side. That's a big one to always look for. Other interesting ones, I once had a client who came in, this was a really tragic story, who said, I want your therapy side because I have agoraphobia and a fear of the night sky. And she said, and I need your Akashic record side because I want you to tell the aliens to stop abducting me. And what I realized is that actually those fears like of the night sky often again come back to a birth story issue where it's like the vessel that was carrying us into embodiment wasn't secure or wasn't necessarily going to keep us, which makes sense why we would be really frightened about being suddenly ejected into the middle of nowhere. So those kind of agoraphobia things I do look at. And also, just when I know that there was some kind of trauma, if mum was taken ill around the birth, if there were big moves, if there was a war going on around the time of the birth, any of those kinds of things are things that would make me wonder, oh, maybe this is a birth story issue. Any kind of issues with belonging. So when people can belong really well in a very formal structured environment like the military or in boarding school, but when they go into social situations, so people who say that they cannot stand small talk or are absolutely really freaked out about small talk, that makes me think, oh, belonging issue.
How did you begin on this path yourself as a clinician and therapist?
As a therapist, well, I think all of us who come into therapy come in because we're trying to understand our own story, right?
Okay.
So I had a background in marketing. I worked in the publishing industry for many years. I had been working on a suicide hotline in my spare time. Actually, when I moved to the States from the UK, I wanted to do that again and then found, oh, it's really hard to do anything in the health and healing professions in the States without a whole lot of red tape. So I went back to school, became a marriage and family therapist, and then did some EMDR myself as a client. And it was so profound and so life-changing that I came out and thought, this is what I need to do for myself. This is what I want to do. So I took every training I possibly could. I got certified with EMDR as fast as I could, and then really built my whole practice. And then just learned from the clients. Clients have taught me everything. And just the fascinating connections. And I love Francine Shapiro's encouragement to ask, why does this make sense? So every single symptom that walked through the door, whether it's a phobia, driving phobias, that's a big one that tells me birth story, funnily enough. I would find these places and it was like solving a puzzle and then putting all of the pieces together. And then once a client has the whole story, then those symptoms are no longer needed.
That is so great. When we think we find our I'm a grief therapist. And so all of those grief issues and things that happen, when you find that, you can match that with EMDR. It's so exciting when we find that identity within ourselves
Right.
there and we work with those things. Can you just describe what that is and how you may work with clients with that?
Yeah. So really the idea of the Akasha is just that information is not local. It's not necessarily held in our heads. And there's even some suggestions now, research that maybe even memories aren't even held in our heads. Maybe even memories are actually out there and we're just attuning to them. And that we can learn to tune our frequency into different parts. So the idea is that however we conceptualize it, there is information out there that we can tap into and bring through that can help us with our life's journey, help us make sense of why we came into being in the world, what we're here to do, how we can make the best of those relationships. There are people who will do formal Akashic Records readings and with permission to open up your Akashic record and then be able to bring through whatever information there is there from the spirit world for you to be able to incorporate into your life. Now, the way that I love to work with it and the way that I personally do it is more thinking about that bigger story of what brought us in. And so when I'm working with the birth story, for example, I take the client back in time and place to go and observe the time of their birth. I want to see who was there. I want to see what was going on. I want to see, were you ready to come into life or was this really scary? Were you kind of negotiating on the roof of the hospital before you actually came in and decided to be born? And then being able to just bring in people who've maybe crossed or who weren't there at the time and bring them in spirit to be able to just enhance the process and offer some support. And I do think one of the things with Akashic Records work is what I call time travel. So you can go back and you can repair things from the past or you can change them a little bit. So it really informs how I do the work and how I invite support and resources in to assist with someone's birth story. And I really feel too that when we go back in time and space and do that work, that it does actually make a difference. It's almost like at that time we did feel our future self come back in and be able to help us
Wow.
with us. So
Wow, that's powerful there. Do you feel have you done one yourself? Your Akashic reading?
my Akashic readings, yes, I've done lots.
Is this part of your journey when you had yours read, and did it show what you're doing now?
When I first encountered PTSD, it was back when I was working on a suicide line back in England, and I was in my early 20s. And I had no idea what was going on. Nobody in the branch really knew what was going on for this particular caller. Obviously, she was in horrible dissociative flashbacks. And it's like I just kind of knew intuitively. I just had to sit there and be present with her, get her to breathe with me, get her to be in the moment with me, regulate her nervous system. What I sometimes do now, I'm going to get teary about this, but when I learned, oh, this is what this was, it's like I'll send my current self back to go and whisper to my 20-year-old self and say, this is what you need to do. This is the instruction. This is how you work with this client. And so the idea of bringing through that information from a future self or from, I don't know, spirit world, wherever it comes through, and then say, let's go and resource back in the past to go and make this go a little bit better. And it's just a hugely helpful part of healing. I just love to do that work. And then I do it with the future as well, with clients who have something coming up. I'll say, okay, well, let's just go through and look from now to the future self and see if we can just have some conversations about how we would like this to go, what we would like this to look like, what we're asking for help with. So whether that's a job interview, whether it's a surgery, whether it's anything big coming up in your life, let's go and set the scene. Let's get all of your guides, angels, spirit, your current self, all of the resources that are a part of you to go and help with that process. So yeah, I go forward as well as back.
That is so amazing. I think just I guess, when I went through EMDR training and we were trying to figure out how to, incorporate these aspects of self that we knew in our clinical place, for me
Mhm.
with grief and DBT, how to incorporate them. They were like, nope, just go to the protocol. And now I'm at a place where I can sort of expand into the circle.
Mhm.
Makes me feel happy, but I can really remember like, nope, just follow the steps. And I think there's a real clinical rationale there. But I think I would present it a little different in my trainings for, yeah, this is just the first step. We want you just to focus on this. And there are advanced trainings and interventions that will support you with that if you choose as the career path. So just know there's more training, but let's just focus on this one part versus you're not competent enough was the message there at my training. And we have these clinicians. One of my missions is to create a culture of support, encouragement, positive feedback, and making sure clinicians are comfortable when they're learning these foundational skills. And even now, Emdria has taken just what you would simply submit, do this, and they're putting it into the modules and they're having several reviewers, and feedback's always different. In my spiritual journey, I'm here to heal trauma. I work in a place, you'll maybe resonate with this. It's called the Magic Valley. That's where I live. I live in a lot of magic, and I still have to keep remembering I'm here to transform mental health care in rural Idaho and the Magic Valley, and that's my mission. And so I will take your feedback very graciously. Yes, it feels like fawning. Yes, ma'am, I'll do that to get to where I need to be. But I think I understand why they're kind of vetting people, but I just still really want my clinicians to feel that culture, that presence, that unity, and then help clinicians understand when can you expand into other genres or protocols and that you are enough. I hear a lot of imposter syndrome. I don't know if I'm doing it correctly. And I really want to say EMDR, even spiritually, is a very advanced intervention for spiritual realm, spiritual work, memory work. And so it is enough. And I think just embodying that message and that presence, like, yep. And it's a lot of work and a lot of support to be able to practice over and over until we can open up ourselves to these different realms. And so it's a whole personal, emotional, social, spiritual development process to be able to get through that.
Right. And I think with any new skill, it's really difficult because you need to learn how to do it by the book before you can start messing with it. And so that's a piece there. Plus, Shapiro had such an uphill battle of being able to get established against CBT, or at least to be considered as good as CBT, which is why it had to be so rigid. And she did it, and she opened up the way for so many mind body therapies to follow, which is super important. And it does make it tricky now with training because there is still that fidelity to the model. And it is an art to learn, okay, when do I take the model and then when do I bring extra pieces in? This is why I love my blending work. I love bringing in other pieces to expand the magic and see what's possible.
I love when a patient says, I'm here for all the tricks.
I
Do
have a
whatever
lot
you
of
need to do,
tricks.
I'm here for it all. And so he's been with me ever since I even became a first EMDR
Yeah.
therapist. And so he's seen me personally grow. And he's like, how do you know where to find this in all of the books? It's like you just have to know where to go and what you're trying to do and have your scripts and things ready, for whatever comes up in that very
Mhm.
organic session, in that process. I wanted to just kind of pick your brain a little bit about so Andrea is going to go through this branding campaign and they're remodeling the consultant criteria. Are you up on that?
I'm actually not. So I am a member of EMDR. I keep up my certification. Now I tend to keep it slightly at arm's length. I appreciate what they do. And I also like to do my own little magic thing without putting it into the EMDR box. So I'm not entirely up on what's happening.
They're going to be your branding person. And so they're going through a rebranding with certification and consultation, and they're going to make these changes every 3 to 5 years. And so they're taking the tracks. And so they're making it a certification track, which will be a clinician track. And then they're doing an educator track now with consultant and training and those kinds of things. I don't really know what that branding piece is. I just was wondering if you had any insight into what potentially might be coming with like the branding campaign. What does that mean? Is it more presence on social media? What does that world look like?
So I don't know what it's going to look like now. I can tell you what it looked like about 10 years ago, which was at the period when I was on the board and I'd actually got a background in some branding and marcom. And so at that point, we worked with an agency that was just helping us really hone down the message so that we could be really clear about what it was that we do, what it was that we're offering, how we could stand out among all of the other types of therapy or healing work that might be out there, talking about why it is so effective, how it works, and really encouraging people to get healing from their trauma. When there can be a really cohesive message and cohesive look and feel to all of your materials, anytime you see it on social media or you can add, it's just like, oh, I recognize that. That's EMDR, that's EMDR. And then everybody can use that messaging on their sites. It strengthens the recognition of the process and really strengthens the recognition that healing is possible. There's often a belief that with PTSD that it's not possible to heal. And of course, we
Yeah.
know it's totally possible. And so the more we can be cohesive in a message and get that out to everyone in the world, the more healing that can happen. And as we heal ourselves and as everybody heals themselves, then healing the world is more possible.
Are
So
you doing that work currently, like branding and that kind of thing, or is that kind of in the past for you?
that was my old career. That's what I did before I became a therapist. I do bring it in to my own work. Obviously, if you look at my website and just how I try and do my own social media. So I do care about the brand, but I generally have other people doing it for me now because it's too hard to do it for yourself. It's actually really hard to do your own. So, and much easier to have somebody who sees you objectively and then interviews you and then takes it and does it for you. So that's why it is helpful to get an outside agency to interview and then to be able to put the pieces and make the story together. So kind of in the same way that we do with our clients, you need an external agency to do that for you as an organization.
Where do you see the future of EMDRIA going now that Francine's passed, or future of EMDR?
I think, and everything I do is informed by the EMDR process. And Francine Shapiro was so magnificent and so brilliant in what she brought through. Really, I see the whole healing profession as becoming much more, merging much more. So we bringing in more of the spiritual healing, the energy healing, and there's more merging between coaching and therapy. Often that's just because it's such a pain of regulation to get in with a therapist and then to go through a diagnosis and all of that process. So you're just going to take your stuff to whoever's going to listen. And so I think there's the way that healing is going to go is going to be a much more integrated way of healing that looks at our spiritual health as well as our physical health, as well as our emotional and mental health. And I think that's exciting. I am sad for EMDR a little bit because of this fidelity to the model that was how it came into being that might cause us to miss some of these opportunities to bring in new ways of healing. So my professional home now is the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology, which is where I'm allowed to bring all of this blending. So I'm a big staunch proponent of EMDR and all of the EMDR model, but I love the ability to then be able to blend it with some of these other energy, embodiment, and spiritual practices, which is what I think is the future.
Yeah, and we're just always thinking about these things as far as how is this going to go? What is it going to be like? And I don't know what her Akashic record would say for Dr. Shapiro, but I'm sure it would be big. You know,
Mhm. So powerful how she brought that through and worked with that and just, faced so much opposition and so much ridicule from the established psychotherapy crowd and she worked and worked and worked to be able to get it. And I do remember at my first Andrea conference that I went to, which was in 2009 in Atlanta. And she stood up in an after dinner speech and was talking a little bit about the struggle and particularly how the CBT lobby had made life so difficult. And she stood there and she said, when the next things come along, we are not going to poo-poo it the way that we have been poo-pooed. And so I think actually she would have been committed to whatever the next thing would have been
And
on
the
it.
Taylor Swift version, the next era.
Right.
The Eras tour, all of these different eras. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're just in a different kind of place, because I never got to meet her or see her, and I came in 2019,
Mm.
and so it was just in that end time.
Mm.
So if somebody was interested in starting with the birth story work, where would they start?
So I always suggest that we don't want to submit our clients to anything that we haven't been through ourselves. So I'd suggest they book a session with me and actually let me take them through it. I am always very willing to share the protocol and share the questionnaire for them to be able to take that into their additional work. I think another way, if they don't want to go the whole hog and do that just yet or wait for my book to finally come out when I get around to writing it, it's just to think about asking those questions about what do you know about the circumstances surrounding conception, the time you spent in utero, and your birth story, and just letting that open up so much more discussion. I'd also just encourage to look at the foundation of the Katie O'Shea and Sandra Paulson work, because that's been really, really powerful. And that is Andrea approved as having the fidelity to the model. So
Good. Well, where can people find you? Where can they book with you? Share with us all the details.
So my website is therapyjane.com. It's possible to find out details of all my stuff there. I do also have a series of training courses, and I do a lot of work in parts work. I have a basic trauma healing course, which is informed by the EMDR model, but anyone can just find me, therapyjane.com. I'm also on the socials as Jane McCampbell Stewart or therapyjane_ on Instagram. So I'd be very happy to connect with anybody who's interested in my work. I am up in Canada now, so I'm usually at the EMDR Canada conference, but I will maybe make it down to an Andrea one in the coming year.
I'm going to be at Andrea. It's going to be in Anaheim next year again. So
Same time zone. Woohoo.
yeah,
We'll
yes.
take that.
Well, thank you so much. We are going to have you back. If you're listening, just make sure that you tune in the future. We do want to give you a big shout out and say thank you for coming and all of the work that you're done, and institutional knowledge as well. Thank you for all of that you bring forward. See us next time. We are here, Kathy on the Couch, the new EMDR podcast. We rebranded. It's been so fun. And we will see you next time. Stay tuned for our next interviews as we publish all EMDR content. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us at another episode of Kathy on the Couch, the EMDR podcast for everyday clinicians. We hope today's conversation has inspired you, sparked new ideas, and offered practical tools you can bring into your own practice. Whether you're just starting out in the mental health field, a seasoned clinician, or someone just curious about the transformative power of EMDR, we're grateful to have you as a part of our great community. EMDR University is here to companion you alongside your EMDR career path from Rewired 360. The moment you complete your basic training, we offer comprehensive support and resources that guide you through every stage, from newly trained EMDR clinicians to EMDR certification, consultants in training, and even trainers. Our curriculum is designed to fill the gaps often found in the marketplace, providing advanced training and consultation and mentorship to you as you progress in your professional journey. Whether you're seeking foundational skills or advanced expertise, EMDR University is your partner in growth and excellence. So be sure to check out our show notes for a full list of courses, and don't forget to visit our swag store at rewired360.shop. Also check out our show notes if you're interested in learning more about EMDR intensives or want to look at innovative tools like Dharma Doctor Tappers, and you'll find the links in our show notes. A quick disclaimer: the information shared on this podcast reflects the perspectives and experiences of our guests and hosts. It's not intended to substitute for professional consultation, supervision, or individual guidance. If you have questions about how to apply any of the concepts discussed, we encourage you to consult with your clinical supervisor, consultant, or your local supervision board. As always, follow research-based protocols and best practices in your work. We're here to walk alongside you as you deepen your understanding of EMDR. And until next time, keep connecting, learning, and keep rewiring for success. Take care. This is Kathy Couch. On behalf of Tony Parmenter and the entire team, thank you for being here with us on the couch, and we'll see you in the next episode.